So, hello there, and welcome to a new Night to Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want for about half an hour to an hour once a week. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Shazam, Fury of the Gods, and also Scream 6. But before I review those, I should say what I say to every podcast I do, that if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello there to my viewers, but heck, you just don't have the time to watch the full podcast on YouTube, they can also check the podcast out audibly on Spotify and Night and Movies on that platform, and there should also be a link to my Spotify account with this podcast in the description of this video below. But if you are listening on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check the podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night and Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you are watching or listening to the podcast, if you enjoy the podcast, then please feel free to like and subscribe. I mean, if you don't enjoy the podcast, you don't have to like and subscribe, but I will feel offended. But if you enjoy it, do like and subscribe, and also leave some feedback so I know what to improve on in the near distant future on these podcasts. Give me some suggestions of things to talk about as well, because why not? But anyway, let's get straight into it today, shall we? Let's get straight into the reviews that I'm doing, and let's talk about Scream 6 as a motorbike goes past right now. I don't know if the mic's picking that up, but still, nonetheless, apologies if there's any noise interference whatsoever. But yeah, Scream 6. So this film came out last week, and I was planning to go and watch it last week as well. It came out last Friday. 2 Fridays ago, I suppose, actually, because this podcast goes out on a Sunday. So yeah, it came out not last Friday, but the Friday beforehand. And I was planning to watch it then, but it snowed quite heavily in my area, and none of the buses were really going up to where I lived, and the roads, although you could drive on them, they weren't exactly safe. So I did try going to the cinema, but long story short, it didn't work, and I didn't end up getting there, and I didn't end up watching Scream 6 last week. However, I did have time to watch it earlier this week. I think it was on Wednesday. I went to go and see Scream 6. I was quite excited. I heard some really good things about it. I was hoping it was going to be great and everything like that. And I'll get on to my thoughts on Scream 6 very shortly. But basically the plot of the film, basically the plot of Scream 6 is that Ghostface is now in New York. He's chasing our main characters. We have Gail, once again played by Courtney Cox. She's returning in this film. No Neve Campbell, no Sydney, who has been the protagonist of all previous 5 Scream films. Well, not so much actually in Scream 5, but she's been a prominent presence in all the Scream films nonetheless. But she's not back in this one. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on this, but if you go and look it up, essentially, the filmmakers behind this one offered her a part, and she didn't think it was worthy enough. It's something like that. If you don't know, go and look it up, then come back to this video. But anyway, yeah, you got Courtney Cox returning as Gail, you have what was the character? Kirby from Scream 4, she's back as well, which is a bit of a surprise. But then also, you have the main cast from Scream 5 returning as well. And so that's the core 4. That's what they call themselves in this film, the core 4. And they're all back. And like I said before, Ghostface is about in New York. He's chasing them, he wants to kill them. This film's more violent, it's more gory, and it's more expansive. It's bigger, we're 6 films into the Scream franchise now, and that's the idea. Just keep making it bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually Ghostface will, what country will he end up in next? That's what I'm trying to say. It's going to go from country to country to city to whatever. That's what's going to happen in the later installments in the Scream franchise. But right now, in Scream 6, he's in New York. And here's the thing with me in the Scream franchise overall. I think the first one, like many other people do, is brilliant. It's so clever. It's postmodern. It's making fun of all those horror tropes you get in the horror genre, but doing it in a way that's having fun with itself, and it's also accustomed to those horror tropes. There are moments in the first Scream which are genuinely scary to watch and really intense, and I just think it's brilliant, and I really didn't expect to like it that much, because I watched it for the first time, I think it was like the week before Halloween last year, and I heard from one of my close friends that it wasn't that good. And that close friend also told me who the killer was in the first film. So it put me off watching that first Scream for a while, because he said to me, and spoiler here for the first Scream in case you haven't watched it, but that film came out in the early 90s, so, you know, you've had quite a long time to do so. But he told me that the killer in the first Scream was a guy who played Shaggy in those early 2000s Scooby-Doo movies. And by the way, those movies were ridiculously entertaining. I don't care what anyone says. Those Scooby-Doo movies are weird, but brilliant in my opinion. But anyway, that's neither here or there. So he told me it was a guy who played Shaggy in those Scooby-Doo movies, and I was like, ugh. So he told me the killer is now. He told me what the reveal is. I don't know what to scream now, because I know in the back of my mind when I'm watching it who's doing all the killing, who's Ghostface. So I put it off for a while. That was a couple of years before I did eventually watch the film. And then when I sat down to watch the film, I was watching it thinking that a bit, although still having a great time though, because of the way it was written, the way Wes Craven was directing, I was still having a good time. But then when the twist came, it turned out that yes, that character that, you know, my mate told me about was the killer, but it was also somebody else. And so I was like, ooh, that was really nice. I didn't see that coming. That's great. And so the twists were really great. And the writing was just... everything about the first Scream is so good in my opinion. It's got a great cast. Everyone's great in it. So, you know, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, Neve Campbell, all the other cast members. There's somebody really famous in it. I'm forgetting off the top of my head right now. But yes, you know, that first Scream is absolutely brilliant. And you know what? I even like Scream 2 quite a lot. I don't think it's as good as the first film, but it's a worthy follow-up in my opinion. I'd kind of equate it to Rocky 2, which I talked about a couple of podcasts ago when I reviewed Creed 3 on this channel. You know, what I said about Rocky 2 was it's a good movie, it's a good follow-up, but it only really works as a sequel, and that's kind of the same way I feel about Scream 2. You know, it only really works as a sequel. You have to watch the first Scream to fully understand what's going on in the second Scream, and I think there's a lot of references to Scream 2 in Scream 1 as well. Now, that makes sense. There's a lot of references in Scream 2 to Scream 1. Is that what I'm saying? I can't remember now. I'm going all over the place. But yes, you get the point I'm making. Scream 2 is... Pardon me, Scream 2 is great. I had a great time watching it. You know, it was just as enjoyable as the first one, in my opinion. The performances are great. It was still well written. It was making fun of, you know, all those tropes you get in horror sequels, and I liked how it did that. And I still had a great time with it. I mean, yes, it's very silly, and yes, it's very far-fetched, but it kind of embraced all that, so that's why I enjoyed Scream 2 quite a lot. But then you get into Scream 3, and Scream 3 was the first film in the Scream franchise, which I didn't dislike it, actually, but I just found it boring to watch. That was the thing about Scream 3. It's got some good moments and some good ideas, and I liked seeing the main three cast members back. But the thing is about Scream 3 is it felt like Wes Craven was a bit bored making it, to be honest. I mean, I hate using that word bored, but it's the truth when it came to Scream 3. None of it really felt like it had that sort of energy and that sort of, you know, not necessarily joy, but that sort of, what am I looking for? What word am I looking for? That sort of just intensity and that bite. That's what the word I'm looking for. That bite that the first two Scream films had. Scream 3 just kind of felt like they was making it for the sake of making it. You know what I mean? I didn't mind parts of it. There's definitely some interesting ideas in there, but I never really liked any of the new characters in Scream 3. Like, Emily Mortimer's in there as well, and young Emily Mortimer, and that was a bit of a surprise to see. And also the twist at the end, when you find out who Ghostface is in that film, I think is very far-fetched and very silly, and took me out of the film. I was like, really? We're doing that? Like, in Scream 3, they're making fun of, all horror trilogies, they never really stick the landing, and well, I'm sorry Wes Craven, but it didn't work. You know, it didn't stick the landing with the third Scream film. And not to say, you know, it's got some redeeming features, definitely, but, you know, it's not as good as it could have been. I wanted more from Scream 3, although it does have quite a nice tongue-in-cheek cameo from the late, great Kai Fisher, who, when you're watching the film, was actually quite funny, but that's only one of the redeeming features about Scream 3. And then you go on to Scream 4, though, and Scream 4 is the first film, I said the first film there, but the first film in the Scream franchise that I didn't like. Again, it's got some redeeming features, but I didn't care about any of the new characters whatsoever. I mean, the cast did a fine job. One of the Culkin brothers is in that one. Also, I think it's Emma Roberts, who is actually Julia Roberts' niece, is in that one. She's really good in there. But Scream 4, right, it's making fun of all these horror reboots. You know, it's been quite postmodern saying, you know, horror reboots don't really work. They all have poor direction, they're all poorly written, and they're just not that good. But then the thing is, though, Scream 4 is also poorly directed, and it's also poorly written, and I get that might be the point, I understand that, but it doesn't change the fact that I was watching a film which didn't have good filmmaking, which was loud and noisy, and really, really unengaging. Like, I understand what they're trying to do, but it just took me out of it. For most of my time watching Scream 4, I really did not care about anything, because I was just thinking, does Wes Craven understand that he's making a bad film here? I just don't get it. And again, it's got some redeeming features, like I spoke about. The cast don't do a bad job. It's nice seeing the original 3 cast members back, you know, David Arquette, Courtney Cox and Lee Campbell. It's nice seeing them back in that film. But Scream 4, yeah, it really rubbed me up the wrong way. Like, that was one when I finished it and went, you know what? I never want to see that film again. You know, I just thought it was... I don't know what the intention was with that film. That's what I'm saying. I understand what it's trying to do, but yeah, it just became another really bad horror reboot. But then you get Scream 5, or as it was original when it came out, Scream, which came out, you know, last year, I think it did. I think it came out in 2022, because it was meant to come out in 2021, and I think they even had the premiere for it before everything went into lockdown. But then, obviously, because of lockdown, because of the pandemic, the film got delayed. And the thing is with Scream 5 is I had so much hope going into that film. And there's so many great things about it. I remember when it came out in the cinema, and I was even tempted to go and see the film myself when it came out in the cinema. Even so, when it came out, I didn't see any of the other Scream films. I was like, you know what? I'm tempted to, just to see what it's like. Just to watch a Scream film in the cinema. I haven't had that experience. But I didn't. And I decided to wait till I watched all previous 4 Scream films. And here's the thing with Scream 5. Again, it's got some redeeming features. It's got some interesting ideas. You know, this whole idea of a requel. It's a reboot, but also a sequel. And they play on that quite a lot. There's a lot of references to Last Jedi, kind of. If you watch the film, you understand what I mean. There's kind of references to The Last Jedi, and I think it's done quite clever. And that whole idea of a requel, it works, and how they play on that. And, you know, Jack Quaid's good in that film. I really like Jack Quaid as Huey in The Boys TV show, and he's good in that film. I don't think the new cast do a bad job. I wasn't really invested in any of their characters, but I don't think they do a bad job. And I like seeing the original cast members back. I mean, that sounds like, you know, I'm a bit of a broken record, you know. With all the Scream films, I like to see the original cast members back. But I did in Scream 5, because they'd all grown up a bit. It was, you know, how many years after Scream 4? Scream 4 was 2011. Scream 5 was meant to come out in 2021. So, you know, it'd been quite a few years. And there was so much potential with Scream 5. That was the thing, though. But ultimately, I found Scream 5 to be rather underwhelming, because it took itself too seriously, and it had so much potential for all these things. Like, it had all the pieces of the puzzle, but it didn't quite put them together correctly. You know what I mean? Like, David Arquette's in the film, and I'm not going to go into too much spoilers here, because it even goes with my problem with Scream 6, though. But the thing is about David Arquette is he's in that film, and I really like seeing David Arquette again as Dewey in the Scream franchise. He's even my favourite character in the Scream franchise. But they do something to that character, and I think it loses something. I think you lose something with what they do to that character. Saki, I'm just going to come out and say, if you haven't seen Scream 5, I'm sorry, but I'm going to spoil it. They killed Dewey. They killed Dewey in Scream 5, and I feel that was a bad decision. I mean, at the time when you're watching it, it's shocking, it's surprising. Like, oh my god, they killed Dewey. You know, he was in all previous 4 Scream films. He's one of the staple characters of this franchise, and they just killed him off. Wow, that's quite a unique move. But then it almost feels straight after they've done that they've instantly regretted their decision to kill off Dewey. Like, oh my god, we killed off Dewey. Well, why have we done that? I didn't really think it through. And that was really annoying, because Dewey is a great character. He's my favourite character in the Scream franchise. And then after that, it felt like the rest of Scream 5, although it had its moments. I liked seeing Neve Campbell back, and I liked seeing Courtney Cox back. But after Dewey died, it felt like the film took itself way too seriously. I wasn't really on board with any of it after that, because I was just thinking, you killed off Dewey? Why did he do that? You know, because you do lose something. And that's kind of the thing with Scream 6 as well. No, that is the thing with Scream 6. It isn't kind of the thing, it is the thing. Because Scream 6, again, much like Scream 5, I went into so much hope. But there's so many great things about it, people raving about it, even people who weren't really fans of Scream 5 or weren't really fans of any of the Scream sequels were saying, you know what, this film is great, it's really enjoyable, they're going to New York now, it's gory, it's bloodier, it's all these different things, you know. It's just so much fun. And I went to cinema with so much hope for Scream 6. And here's the funny thing, just before the film started, there was somebody in my cinema clearing up and everything like that, you know, she was clearing up all the waste on the floor. And I was watching it, I went to the cinema with my mum to watch this. My mum went, oh, did you enjoy the film? Because she said she already watched it. And this caretaker who was clearing everything up in the cinema, she went, I know it's not a caretaker, but it was somebody who worked there, but she said, it was okay. And I thought, yikes, you know, when she said, it was okay, I was like, oh no. At the same time, you know, it's all subjective. I was hoping I'd have a very different experience. There's been plenty of films in the past which people I admire have come out and said, or people I really like have come out and said, oh, it's not really for me, but I've absolutely loved it. But I was watching Scream 6, and I wasn't sure if I was meant to enjoy it or not. That Scream 6 I found really disappointing. Like, really disappointing. And that's not to say it doesn't have its moments. I think it's a step up from Scream 5, definitely. There's some sequences in the film which are absolutely brilliant. Like, the opening, I think, is very clever, because you're watching the opening, and it just starts off like a typical Scream film, and then something happens, and you're like, oh, wow, that's quite... That's clever storytelling. Let's see where this goes. And then it goes somewhere, but doesn't really go anywhere. And then there's a scene later in the movie as well, where there's these people trying to get across from one building to another building, but there's quite a large gap, and using this ladder, which isn't too sturdy to get across. And that's quite an intense scene. And there's one scene in a train, and if you've seen the trailer for Scream 6, you'll know what scene I'm talking about. There's one scene in a train, which is very suspenseful. You're watching it and going, okay, this is brilliant the way they're doing everything, because it's Halloween, there's all these people in costumes, there's all different people in Ghostface costumes, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, this is the film I want to see. But the rest of the film felt too gory, it didn't feel fun enough, it felt like it was taking itself too seriously, and everyone is screaming in this film, and I get that might be the point. We're talking about a franchise that's called Scream, but the thing is, the screaming got on my nerves really quickly. Like, as soon as Ghostface was there, everyone was screaming, going, like, all the time. And it was so loud and noisy again, much like Scream 4. And, you know, there's so many moments where it just felt like it could have been better. Like, the twist makes sense in Scream 6 when you find out who the killer is. The twist makes sense. But I also just went, oh, that's cool. Great, you know, where are we going from here? Oh, it's another sequence where people are getting stabbed, but they're getting up 2 seconds later and they're absolutely fine. I'm sorry, there's one character, and I won't give it away, but there's one character who gets stabbed about, let's say, 7 times. That's what it looked like in the film. And it turns out, well, he didn't die, let's just say that. Or that character didn't die, I almost gave it away there. But, yeah, there's moments which were good, but it was too gory as well. Like, there's the line you don't want to cross with horror movies. You don't want them to be too gory, in my opinion. Or if they are too gory, at least in my opinion, for my taste, that's when I start going, yeah, I'm not interested anymore, because you're taking me out of it, because the amount of gore you are using, it's way too much. And I felt Scream 6 not only crossed that line of too much gore, but it was running a mile away from that line. Like, the amount of gore used in this film is slightly ridiculous, and it missed Dewey. It missed Dewey, like, it missed Neve Campbell as well. But also, they kind of work around that with the new two female leads. So I didn't mind that too much, because the new two female leads, I forgot the name of one of the actors. I think it's Melissa Balemo. I might pronounce the actor's name wrong. I might be getting it wrong completely, so I do apologise about that. But also Jenna Ortega, who everyone now knows as Wednesday from the Wednesday TV show. You know, those two leads, they do a really good job. And, you know, they kind of make you not miss Neve Campbell. I mean, do I think the film would be better with Neve Campbell? Sure. But I don't think she was necessarily needed at the same time. So maybe the film wouldn't be better. And it was also nice seeing Courtney Cox back again. But the thing is with Courtney Cox in this film, it felt like she was out of place. It didn't feel like she was near there, because you don't have Dewey anymore, and you don't have Sydney in this one. So it felt like she was out of place. It felt like, oh, well, we can't get the other two cast members back because we killed off one in the last film, and, you know, Neve Campbell says she's not going to come back. So let's just get Courtney Cox back anyway. Why? Because we can, and it didn't feel like she needed to be in this film. In the other Scream films, it felt like she needed to be there. She had a purpose being there, mainly because of Dewey. But in this one, it felt a bit out of place. And going back onto that whole thing, like, it needed Dewey in there. Dewey is Dewey is my favourite character in the Scream franchise. Because David Arquette, whenever he was playing Dewey, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it worked anyway, he always seemed like he was on edge in every single scene in all the Scream films beforehand. And it worked so well, though. You watch that character, and he's almost like you're watching an audience member in a Scream film. That's why the character works. You know, a Scream film, then he laughs, he makes jokes, and it's just the perfect sort of character for all these films. You have Neve Campbell's character, Sydney, in the previous 5 Scream films, so taking everything seriously, and understandably so. She's being hunted, she's being, you know, Ghostface is trying to kill her in the previous 5 Scream films. And then, you know, you have Courtney Cox's character, Gail, who's annoying, but you kind of enjoy watching at the same time. And that's a great thing about the first 2 Scream films. You have annoying characters in there, but they're still enjoyable to watch. But the thing is all about Scream 6, it's got annoying characters in there, but they're not enjoyable to watch. But back into what I was saying, you know, Gail was a character which worked in the previous Scream films because she was paired with Dewey, though. Because, you know, even though Courtney Cox's characters and Neve Campbell's characters were serious in the previous Scream films, they always had David Arquette in there to kind of just make it fun. And you miss that in this film, though. There was a David Arquette Dewey gap. That's what there was a David Arquette Dewey hole in the film, because this didn't feel fun enough. Like, the first 2 Scream films, they had sequences which were scary. You were on the edge of your seat in those sequences, but they were also fun. And they made fun of all these horror tropes. You know, that whole idea of, you know, hello, Sydney, what's your favourite scary movie? I mean, I can't do a Ghostface impression whatsoever, but they were fun. And the thing is, though, Scream 6, I wasn't sure if I was meant to be enjoying on that because of the amount of gore that was used, the amount of violence, the amount of screaming. I was just sat there after a while going, am I meant to be enjoying this, or am I meant to be actually scared for that? I don't know. And quite frankly, I don't care. I don't really care about any of the new characters. I think the cast do a fine job. I think the addition of, well, you know, bringing back Kirby from Scream 4 was a fine decision. You know, I don't think it was necessarily needed, but it was kind of nice. But, you know, I wasn't sure why, but still, okay, you bring it back. But yeah, the twist was fine. It made sense. But do we need more Ghostfaces now? Do we need more Ghostface killers? Like, it's just, it just feels like the franchise, much like the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now, it just feels like it's going to go on forever. It feels like the Scream franchise is never, ever going to stop. And Scream 6 is like, it's evident of that. I really hope that if they make a Scream 7, it's the last. Because they do set the ending of Scream 6 up for quite, if I interpret it correctly, quite an interesting Scream 7, perhaps. But, I don't know. I'm a bit over it all, to be honest. Like, the first 2 Scream films were really, really great, in my opinion. Scream 3 had its moments, bit dull. Scream 4, not really my cup of tea. Scream 5, underwhelming. And Scream 6, just as underwhelming. It has its moments, it definitely does. But it just wasn't for me. It's also way too long as well, and yeah, I miss Dewey. And it had that Dewey-shaped hole, and I think if Dewey was in there, I probably would have enjoyed the film more. But hey, that's just me. And so overall, I'm going to say that Scream 6 is an unnecessarily serious and gory film that misses the touch that made the first two Scream films for me so endearing. And so that's why I'm going to say that it's a 5 out of 10. That's not to say it doesn't have its redeeming features, but it did make me miss that first Scream film and that iconic line of, "Hello, Sydney, what's your favourite scary movie?" There's not really a moment like that in the film. It just feels like a generic slasher film after a while, and slasher films, at least from the ones I've seen so far, aren't really for me. And Scream 6 wasn't. I can understand why a lot of people would like it, and if you like Scream 6, that's awesome. I know I'm in minority here because this film has got a lot of great reviews from what I've seen, but it was just, it was okay. I'm happy I saw it because, you know, I would have watched it anyway, but I'm happy I saw it. But it does feel now like the Scream franchise, at least with my money, has run its course. And I missed Dewey. I know I said that in the past, but I miss him in this film because David Arquette was great in those 5 previous Scream films. Even in the Scream films, which weren't so good, he was great in them. And also, this film isn't as postmodern as like the first 4 Scream films either. It doesn't make all those self-reflexive jokes of the whole franchise like the first 4 Scream films did. Even in the worst moments of those first 4 Scream films, which were directed by Wes Craven, you know, sadly passed away, so he didn't direct Scream 5. But those first 4 Scream films, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Scream 3 and Scream 4, you know, they still had those postmodern elements and they still made fun of the horror genre in ways that it was like a pastiche but also a bit of a parody in all these different ways which worked really, really well. But much like Scream 5, it's just too serious now, and yeah, I mean, I've talked about it way too much. Scream 6 isn't for me, but if it's you, that's great. But yeah, I was pretty disappointed by this one. But there you go. And like I said before, I'm going to say that Scream 6 is a 5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, let's talk about Shazam! Fury of the Gods. So, this is a sequel to the first Shazam movie, which came out in 2019, and I really enjoyed that film. You know, it's kind of like Tom Hanks's Big meets superheroes. You know what I mean? Like the film starring Tom Hanks, Big, if you haven't seen it, you know, it's a great film, really fun to watch, delightful film. And then Shazam played on many of the ideas from Big, even to the point that it almost copied the very famous scene from Big in the film. I remember it quite well now. And I just had a really wonderful time with the first Shazam. Did it have its issues? Yes. Was the comedy a bit all over the place? Was the tone of the film a bit all over the place? Absolutely. But I came out of the first Shazam and went, you know what? I had a really good time with that because it had a sense of joy in there. And I ended up seeing that film twice at cinema, and I really didn't expect so. I remember seeing the trailer for the first Shazam, you know, the first trailer all the way back. It was like 2018. Yeah, it must have been. Seeing that first trailer for Shazam and thinking, this is not going to be my sort of film, and I ended up quite liking it. I don't think it's amazing, but, you know, it does what it says on the tin. It's a fun and delightful film. And now in the sequel, after the events of the first movie, we now see that Billy's foster family, Billy, who was a protagonist in the, I forgot the second name of the characters now, but Billy, who's protagonist in the first Scream film, different franchise entirely, and that was the last video I was doing. No, so Billy, who was a protagonist in the first Shazam film, he's back here, and if you remember, if you had watched the first Shazam film, you remember that, you know, he has his foster family, and now they all have the Shazam power. They all like him, where they have the Shazam powers, and at the start of this film, we see them working together, saving the day, and all that sort of stuff. But then these goddesses come back to Earth, something like that, or they and they steal this staff, which looks remarkably similar to Gandalf's staff from Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movies, and then they steal this staff, things go wrong, and they get all these ancient things which look like something out of Jason the Argonaut coming into Earth, and the Shazam family have to help save the day whilst sticking together. It's something like that. And here's the thing with Shazam! Fury of the Gods. It's incoherent. It's very messy. Plot lines begin and they are not finished whatsoever. Like, they begin, I'm like, oh, that's something going on there. Then by the end of the movie, it's forgotten about that plot line. There's moments of emotion randomly thrown into big action set pieces, and it's much, much bigger than the first Shazam film, and it felt, because of that, and you know, because it's so big and so much bigger and so much more expansive and looks so much more expensive than the first Shazam film, it's not as good as that first Shazam in my opinion. And there's new characters which are underwritten, and I wasn't really great at my plot synopsis of the film because I'm still not sure what the plot of the film and what the film was actually about. But saying all that though, I didn't mind this one. I enjoyed watching Shazam! Fury of the Gods, or should I say Shazam! Fury of the Gods, because it's got an exclamation mark after Shazam, so you have to say it loud. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I enjoyed watching this film because it had a sense of joy in there, which superhero movies in recent memory have been lacking in my opinion. You know, Black Adam was, I don't even know what that film was, but there wasn't any sense of joy in there. And then you had, you know, Thor Love and Thunder, which was too comedic and felt like it was a bunch of people doing comedy sketches after a while. You had Doc Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, or as I like to call it, Doc Strange in the Multiverse of Meandering, which was way too serious and didn't have that campy, you know, sort of Sam Raimi-esque direction there, which you get in the Evil Dead films. You know, Sam Raimi did Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Meandering, and it didn't feel campy enough though. You almost wanted Bruce Campbell to show up in that film and do his Evil Dead sort of stuff and go groovy, but that didn't happen. So Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Meandering was too serious as well. There's another one, I've got it down here, it must be another one. Yes, that was it. So forgettable. But also Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which was way too serious as well in my opinion. I also had Paul Rudd in that film, who was famously a comedy actor, but in loads of Judd Apatow comedies and things like that. Even that film didn't have any sort of comedy or any sort of life. Now, I had comedy, but comedy generally works for me, but it didn't have any sort of life in there, any sort of joy. People who were making that film and people who were in that film didn't feel like they were having fun. But the thing is about Shazam! Fury of the Gods, even though it's got loads and loads of glaring plot holes and big problems, the people behind the camera and the people in front of the camera felt like they were into what they were making, and so I was into it as well. And it has that sense of joy in there, like I said before, which I felt was missing from recent superhero movies because of Zachary Levi as Shazam. He was so great as Shazam in that first Shazam film, and then in this film, you know, how many times can you say Shazam in the space of 30 seconds? But in this Shazam film, he's still got that joy. Walking in scenes is going, hey look, I'm a superhero, and it's things like that which make the film work. And now you got the whole Shazam family, and all the actors playing the older Shazam family, you know, with all the superpowers, they seem like they're having fun as well. And the kids playing, you know, the foster family, they seem like they're having fun. Everyone just feels like they're having a fun time making this film, and that is why I had a fun time watching it. You know, I'm not really sure why Djimon Hounsou was in this film either, you know, returning as the wizard from the first Shazam, but even he was having a fun time, and I was having a fun time watching him, and the moments in the plot, which I don't think make any sense, but I was smiling watching it as well, because I'm like, doesn't make any sense, but, you know, who cares? It's one of those films where you have an entertaining time watching. You're entertained by it. It's like Russell Crowe and Gladiator. Are you not entertained? And guess what? I was entertained. And also, I felt it was funny as well. It had comedy, which I really didn't expect to laugh at. Like, I'm really iffy with comedy in cinema and stuff like that. When I go to cinema to watch a comedy, I'm really scared because I'm afraid that either everyone's going to laugh in the cinema and I'm not, or it's going to go the other way around. You know, I'm laughing and no one else is, so I feel really self-conscious. The great thing about watching Shazam! Fury of the Gods, well, this isn't great, but the cinema wasn't too full, which makes you think that the film isn't going to get a great box office and maybe not get a sequel, because I kind of enjoy the Shazam films, which isn't great. But the great thing about when I was watching it was the cinema I was in was full of people who were laughing along with the film, and I was laughing along with it as well. I mean, not every joke works, but most of them do. And I was surprised by how many times I laughed during the film, and how it was kind of playing on its whole idea as well, much like the first Shazam. It was about self-reflexive with the whole superhero genre. You know, there's one moment where two characters are kind of professing their love for one another. I mean, not really, but they're talking about their affection for one another, and just have Jaimin Hunter, who's in the background, going, oh, come on, move on. You know, it's a really funny scene, and it just pokes fun at what all those other superhero movies take way too seriously. I didn't mind it. Now, the third act of the film lost me. I found the third act of this one really unengaging because, like I said before, it's much bigger than the first Shazam, and for all the wrong reasons. You know, you've got these big CGI action set pieces in the third act, and you have Lucy Liu, who looks awesome in this film, by the way. She seems like having the time of her life playing this character, playing the villain. You have her riding about in this big CGI dragon, and none of it's believable. And you have all these big skyscrapers and buildings crashing into one another in Pennsylvania, where the third act of the film is set. And you have just all these big CGI creatures. Well, it's very big. You notice how many times I'm saying big is? It's all very, very big in the third act. And it didn't make me long for the third act of the first Shazam film, because from what I remember, that took place like a Christmas fair or something, like a carnival. It was great. You know, it's just small and it was intimate, but it also felt superhero-y. You know what I mean? And in this one, though, it's almost too superhero-y. It feels... There's one moment in the third act of the film which reminded me of Black Adam, and I enjoyed Black Adam for the wrong reason, so that was not a good thing when it reminded me of Black Adam. I was like, oh, come on, really? Yeah, it reminded me a bit of the third act of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice as well, where Superman is trying to kill that big CGI monster. I don't remember much from that film. But, you know, you get what I'm saying. There was a lot of CGI in the third act, which did lose me. But the first two acts were enjoyable enough that I ended up enjoying the film overall. Now, do I think it's as good as the first one, like I've already said? No. I think the first film, what was so great about it was that it had that intimate and emotional just sense of joy in that film. You know, he had a sense of joy, he had a sense of emotion, the emotion was done really well, and this film does have emotion which is done well as well, but by the time you get to all the emotion, it feels like the film is trying to do much. It's overblown, it's overstuffed, and there's characters which are underwritten, and Helen Mirren, who is an amazing actress, obviously it's Helen Mirren, you know, she's underused in this film. If you have Helen Mirren in there, use her more. Lucy Liu is also great as well. Rachel Zegler, I enjoyed watching. Rachel Zegler, who of course played Maria in Spielberg's West Side Story. She's in this film. She's great. All the cast do a great job, but a lot of the characters feel underwritten. The film feels like it's relying a bit too much on the CGI, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a fun time with this film. I don't think it's great by any means. I'm not saying that. I don't think it's a great film, but it was enjoyable enough for me to come out of the cinema and go, I didn't feel like I wasted my time, you know? And I'm really happy that I felt that way, because it's got a lot of big problems. It definitely does. And also, there's one other thing which I've almost got to mention. Two other things, actually. So I'm going to ramble on a bit more here. There's one other thing I've got to mention, which is that the third act of the film almost feels like a child's imagination. And on the surface, that's quite a good idea. You know, have all of these sort of Jason the Argonaut monsters coming in there. And it sounded like quite a good idea on the surface, especially for a Shazam film. Not sure if it totally worked during the execution, but I'm happy David F. Sandberg gave it a go. I'm happy the director gave it a go there. And also, the score is way too loud. That's one of my big problems with this film, actually, is the musical score. This won't be a big problem for many people, but indulge me anyway. The thing is about the musical score, right, is Christoph Beck doing the musical score. It's not Benjamin Wallsfish, I think that's how I pronounce his name, who did the score for the first Shazam. And I think that was a bit of an issue, because that score for the first Shazam I thought was brilliant. It was like bum bum ba da da ba ba da bum 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 ba da dum. It was, pardon me, it was great, and you don't have that score. There's no memorable themes in this Shazam film, and I think it kind of suffered for that. It didn't have that Shazam theme, which I was looking forward to hearing again. I mean, there's a slight glimmer at one moment, it's a flashback to the first Shazam, but apart from that, the score isn't memorable, and I wanted it to be, and I didn't think the score for the first Shazam film was memorable, and, you know, It's a very messy film, and to be honest, it's not that good, but it had a sense of joy in there through Zachary Levi's Shazam, which made it work for me. I thought it was good. Not great, but not bad either. I enjoyed it. And like I said, I laughed I laughed most times of the film. I didn't laugh at all the jokes, but you know, that's just film for you. And yeah, I'm just happy I had a good time with it, because I had heard bad things about it before going in, but I did have a good time with it. And overall, I would say that it's a joyous... Sorry if I get a truck out there, I'll just repeat myself now, in case you didn't hear me. Overall, I would say it's a joyous, if very messy, superhero adventure that's, for me, going to get a 6.5 out of 10. The reason I'm giving it a 6.5 out of 10 is because it is at least enjoyable. You know, I give films which are at least entertaining, in my opinion, a 6 out of 10 films, which, you know, aren't great, but I had a good time watching them. Kind of like Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Kingsman: The Golden Circle, the Kingsman sequel, is not that good in my opinion, but I had a good time watching that. Probably about as good as time as I watching Shazam 2. It's all over the place. There's cameos as well, where I say cameos. There's a cameo, which doesn't really work, and I'm not even sure that person who was doing the cameo was even on the same set that the rest of the cast was. There's moments which I thought could have been delved into more, moments with the family. There's motion which is just thrown in there because heck, why not, in these big action set pieces which use way too much CGI. There's a dragon in there which looks really cool, but also did it need to be there? Not totally sure. And I'm still not sure what the plot of the film was. It's wildly incoherent. But, I said before, and I'll say it again, just because I want to emphasise why the film worked for me. It had a sense of joy, and I had a fun time watching it for that reason. I had a sense of joy, and I felt like everyone behind the camera and everyone in front of the camera was into what they were making. It didn't feel like anyone was bored making this film, like it has felt in previous superhero movies. So, even though it's not great, and even though it's very messy, it's a fun superhero adventure, and that's why I recommend it. And yeah, I had a good time with it. And you know what? I'm happy I did. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Shazam! Fury of the Gods, I'm going to say that it's a 6.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, that's it for me on this live stream that's it for me on this podcast for today. I haven't done a live stream in a very, very long time. But yes, that's it for me on this podcast today. Thank you as always for watching or listening, wherever you have been watching or listening to this podcast. And if you haven't yet, please feel free to like and subscribe on these videos and on these podcasts. And also I should reiterate what I've said in the past couple podcasts as well. I'm very busy right now. I'm currently in the midst of planning, researching and drafting for my dissertation. So I'm in the busiest period of my academic life, so I really don't have that much time free at the moment. So I won't be uploading really any YouTube videos. Maybe something over the next week. Just wait and see. But I probably won't be loading much YouTube videos over the next couple of weeks / months because of how busy I am. But I should have another podcast coming this time next Sunday, so look forward to that. What will I be doing next week? Oh, I don't know yet. So I'm quite excited to see what's coming up in the horizon. But anyway, yes, thank you as always for watching. And yeah, I suppose that's it. So I'll see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.